initial thoughts about this film, because this is so much to unpack with it. And it was one of those movies, quite frankly, that just staying with me. And it's just been a long time since I've had a film stick with me for where, at least once a day I'm like thinking about it and like, and going down like rabbit holes as far as like fact and fiction and what's true about this man's story and the Manhattan Project and just, so from that standpoint, as far as just having an impact, how impactful Oppenheimer was for me as a viewer, to look at something that was, a clear moment in history where, we had a world before the bomb and a world after the bomb. And then thinking that now to things in present day, where the shadows of some of those things that were going on during the Second World War and the Cold War and other things we're seeing it play out, and the questions of technology and science and, things with AI and, the proper, how things can be used or how it can be abused. I mean, all those things that really for me just got me just thinking, and when I left the theater, that ending sequence where sheer thought that, like, when that first went on, they could have ignited the whole damn thing, the whole damn planet. And also, living in the shadow of a world where these things are still around, and just like just one snafu and we could all be gone. It just, I don't know. It just definitely, like I said, it's just definitely something that it just is a film that makes, that stays with you if you really just like take it for what it is. And then just, from a filmmaking standpoint, Nolan, I think it's definitely one of his best films. I know we'll get to our rankings later, but just from an artistic standpoint, and what he was trying to achieve, I think he definitely, if his goal was to make the audience think and ponder about life and death and war and our place in science and how policy and can be influenced by good, bad, and in between things like McCarthyism and other things like that. I mean, he in my opinion, he succeeded. So those are my just quick thoughts to start us off about Oppenheimer. There we go. Yeah.
Those are 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went with my dad. My dad is a big history person. My dad is very judgmental of films. And you think I have a bad suspension of disbelief? He has it worse. And he loves Dunkirk, which is the only other historical film that Nolan has put out. And he loved it. And we walk out of the theater. He loved Oppenheimer. He going into it, he had his worries. But during it and after, I could tell that it's very historically accurate from everything he told me. He's a huge history buff. Like, I can't overemphasize this.
Yeah.
And he, like what you said, is also now going down rabbit holes. He sent me a lot of different things, and I'm like, Dad, I watched the movie too.
I remember you sent me a message earlier in the week.
Yeah. So I feel like he's with you, Will, and I'm like right underneath there, where I think this is a wonderful movie. I think it is one of Nolan's better movies. I do have to admit, I did not walk out questioning everything that Will just said.
Yeah, that's fine.
It did not hit me in that way because I'm just fascinated by Nolan
Mm-hmm.
So I do have to admit, I spent a lot of the movie being like I'm engaged, but I'm like, so why did he pick black and white? Like, what is going on here? What's with the sound design going? Why is it being shot from this angle? Like,
I did too.
I spent so much time with that I still I leave this film like I do with virtually all Nolan films, where I'm like, that was a very well made movie.
Yeah.
I liked it. But the more I think about it, the characters, I don't know. I go back and forth. Like, he still hasn't hit that movie that moves me, like, at my soul. Like, there's not enough emotion.
Yeah.
There's something still very cold, but yeah. Yeah. I think there's much more, but he tries so hard, and I think he's nearly there, because this movie is the closest we've got at it. Like, I heard he wrote the screenplay in first person.
I can see that.
He wanted this movie to be as much as it can through Oppenheimer's eyes.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy to me, considering, this is Oppenheimer's movie, but you got a strong B storyline character here with Strauss. And Strauss, during the third act and throughout the movie, he, like, takes over, where I've heard criticism that people think that the third act is, like, tacked on and feels like a different movie. And I'm like, he ain't paying attention. He ain't paying attention. Strauss is there the whole time.
He is, from the very, very, again, he is a presence throughout that film, especially because the moment the stage was set, whenever they were at the Advanced Institute, when Oppenheimer and Einstein were standing, were having a conversation about the pond.
Yeah.
And
we saw that pond like 5 billion times.
We saw that pond, and then, I mean, you're right. So I agree with you. The people who say that the last hour of the film is tacked on to it, no, it's not. It's just, it really.
It has its explosion in that third act.
Yeah.
Like, Oppenheimer's, I think where some of the criticism is where, or some of this thinking that the third act doesn't make sense or doesn't feel like the same movie, is because you have viewers who go into this being like, okay, Trinity test. Let's do this. We're all here to see the bomb explode. And I'm like, that's not what this movie is about. It's not called a Trinity test. This is about Oppenheimer. So we're going to spend the beginning of the movie when he's like a potential serial killer. Okay? We're going to do that. We're going to spend a lot of time in trains. We're going to see him make friends, go out on dates, and then we'll get to the Trinity test. But we're also we have also been spending a lot of time at this confirmation hearing. So I found this movie to be very interesting in terms of the cast is huge. The cast is, like, I can't say it enough. It's just huge.
It is.
The names, the people who I didn't even think were going to be, Rami Malek is in it.
Yeah.
And they, like, tease you because he's in it for 5 seconds, barely says a word, and then he has an standout moment at the end.
Yep.
And I think the genius here is every character, there's a purpose. I mean, we talk a lot about supporting cast and how, like, supporting cast aren't used, and this is just, it's too much about the main character. We have a movie called Oppenheimer. We spent a lot of time with Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
But the supporting cast are all used in such a way that, I mean, it is a chain reaction. Like every
Yeah.
interaction, everything comes back and it all makes sense and it all gets connected in a very historical, fact-based, and also a very entertaining way.
Yeah. 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 That was the thing that kept me at the edge of my seat, because this could easily have gone the way of a very dry and boring film, but I mean, the pacing of it and the story that it was telling, and you know, and I know another criticism is people saying that it was not a very non-linear storytelling, and I know that some of that is just the way Nolan does his films. I mean, I know.
Yeah, I'm gonna say those people have not seen every Nolan movie.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
I don't understand that as being a criticism, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of just not being familiar with his style, but to me, that was also a very strong element of keeping you engaged, because and also going from the black and white to the color to the various shades, you know, and just to sort of help frame and contextualize where Oppenheimer was in his life, as far and during those moments, but also the going between the black and white and the color was also, to your point about the Strauss story being such a strong B story with this film. It was also showing how Strauss saw the world, as far as, you know, he had a very black and white viewpoint on things, to the point where, you know, he took Oppenheimer, you know, he was really thinking that he was sort of in control of these scientists and control of this narrative here, but actually he wasn't. And also, he also was a very, you know, and this was also just a story about two men's arrogance and also in their hubris with both Strauss and Oppenheimer. And so, yeah.
Yo, I just wanted to add in there that I get the whole idea that it's black and white because that's how Strauss views the world. I don't buy that 100% just because of the similarities between him and Oppenheimer. Both of them.
Shades of Grey?
No, it's not Shades of Grey. Both of them are so much, whether it's Strauss in control of the scientists, like the man who's pulling the strings, or it's Oppenheimer as the creator of the atomic bomb. Both of them have this desire to push forward, to do this, and it's ultimately their own downfall.
Mm-hmm.
Like their own arrogance leads them to clouds their views of what's happening, even though Oppenheimer knows like how this works, while how this is going to play out, he still does it, you know, because he still feels in control up until the point the project's done. Sayonara. We'll see you later.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it's this realization, well, I knew what the world was going to do with this, but now it's definitely out of my hands. I don't know if I thought this all the way through. Like, I was warned. I thought it would always be. And then Strauss, he like finds himself in this position. But I feel like with Strauss, he almost sees Oppenheimer and wants to be buddy, but the moment he realizes that it isn't going to happen, he can't pull that string with Oppenheimer, and he sees how Oppenheimer easily easily is able to play Strauss's game, that's when he becomes more manipulative. But I think there's way too much parallelism between them. I mean, they're perfect foils.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are perfect foils. I mean, because because they're both. It's weird how they're both protagonists and antagonists, and I think that's what Nolan was really trying to show with their interactions in this film. I mean, and again, looking at events pre-bomb, post Trinity test and bomb, because with the whole with whenever they were on the Atomic Energy Commission and trying to. There was a whole sequence there in the dinner table and all the people, men talking. Mm-hmm. And I can't, I'm trying to remember like where in the sequence of things where Oppenheimer's in that one hearing with the AEC and he makes a statement in the meeting and then, from that point forward, Strauss is just like pissed off at him.
Yeah, that gets a little bit hazy for me. Yeah. I think this is a very well edited movie, and I love that it's not linear storytelling. Just because I think if it had been, it would have been just any other biopic.
Right.
But Nolan, of course, uses what he does best and manages to tell it in a very exciting way, by cross-cutting. But he also manages, there's a few spots where that it's like, okay, well, in sequence, when did this conversation happen versus this conversation versus this conversation? Right. Because it gets a bit jumbled.
Yeah. And so whenever they're having the men talking sequence around that table, that is one place, and I know my wife and I are talking about that too, because we both were trying to figure out like where all.
I think that happened after though.
Yeah.
Because Strauss already had it in for him during that scene. Like it's almost as though he was coming, and I want to say that the hearing happened before. Mm-hmm. And he was using this opportunity at the dinner table to take back control and take back his power that he got taken away by like saying, you guys, somebody leaked. Okay. It's not coming from these 3 other sites. It's coming from your site because I say so.
Yeah.
Which it did, but.
Which it did. Yeah. Yeah. I think, now that we're talking about it, that makes sense. I think, and that's, that's where the sometimes editing choices that Nolan makes, like for example, Tenet, where it can jumble up.
But that's why people want to rewatch these things.
Yeah,
is because you want to see what you didn't pick up on the first time. Mm-hmm. I think in a way, again, if you walk out not still questioning timelines, questioning this, it just makes the potential rewatchability that much more higher, which is a good thing. Granted, it's a freaking 3-hour movie. Yeah, it's 3 hours, but I did not feel it. I really, normally I could be like, you could trim a 10-minute, 5 minutes here, whatever. I mean, I will say, with the exception of the big flaw for me, obviously, well, at least the big flaw for me was just how they use Jean and the Florence Pugh scenes, as Jean, but, well, the 2 sex scenes, I just, that's where the coldness of Nolan comes through. Was it the sex scene in the interrogation?
The sex scene in the interrogation, I understand the intent of what he was trying to show, the fishbowl and everything, and the vulnerability and being ripped, exposed, and in that, I just didn't feel like it, but the execution to me just didn't work for me. It just didn't.
See, I like the interrogation scene. I thought that was very well done. And in fact, one of my dad's concerns were about the sex scenes, because he's like, why do they need to put nudity in it? Like, and I told him, like, it's Nolan. There's a reason. As soon as that one played, he looked at me and said, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Okay.
The first one, yeah.
But I agree. Like, we saw Florence, she only had about 5 scenes, and yet I feel like majority of them she was nude the entire time.
Yeah.
So I don't mind it because it was so minimal.
Yeah, it's not from a prudish,
and I like the interrogation scene, and I think maybe if there was so much lust between those two.
Yeah.
That maybe that's why he made the decision because he wanted, I don't know, but we don't have to go that much further into it, but
yeah. No, yeah. I mean, those were the only, I mean, as far as and it's not from a prudish standpoint, I just didn't feel like it added anything to what he was trying to convey there.
Yeah. I think in terms of runtime, I actually do think you could probably shave a bit of it off.
I disagree.
I wouldn't put too much. I will be honest, I was late to the movie because of my whole infuriation about 20 minutes of previews. Okay. Yeah. We cut it really close. Too close, because I think I missed about the good first 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
But I like stayed throughout the rest. I didn't look at my watch once. And I was engaged the whole time. Mm-hmm. So, but I do think some of the slower parts, and upon rewatches, you might notice some things where it's like, we didn't need to stare at that for 2 minutes. You could have we could have had a minute here. Like small things, not complete scenes completely removed.
Yeah.
Another cast member I just want to point out here, because it bothered me. It didn't bother me, but I'm watching this movie and this guy comes on and I look at him and I say, Ari, you're not Chris Hemsworth. You're not Chris Hemsworth. And then I was like, there's 3 Hemsworths. You're not Liam. So you must be the other one. I watched the entire freaking movie thinking this was the other, not Chris, not Liam, the other Hemsworth. Mm-hmm. You know who I'm talking about.
Josh Hartnett.
Yes, exactly. He looks like a Hemsworth, and I'm not okay with this.
I honestly, I have to say, I did not realize that was Josh Hartnett either. I was like, I know this face. I didn't think it was a Hemsworth, but I was like, who is this? And then I saw the credits. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. It's Josh Hartnett. Oh yeah. His Lewis was, I love that character too, because I mean, that was another thing where, you had the science and the politics and the policy, because, clearly Oppenheimer was like, he wasn't he was left leaning, but I don't think he was ever a full blown communist. But
he had commitment issues.
But he definitely had commitment issues for sure. But I did. That was another aspect of the story that I did like too, because it was a show, and really just added depth to the story that they were telling. That again, when you get to that last hour, having all that backstory and context does make those interrogation scenes and as far as with the security clearance resonate so much more, because you do have that.
Well, he did it to himself,
and he did it to himself. Yeah, it wasn't.
Like, yeah, Strauss put together the kangaroo court. Mm-hmm. However, he wouldn't have anything if there wasn't anything there. Right. Like you made all these decisions. There was even the story that involved Casey Affleck, where
oh gosh, that was another.
Yeah, which is another one that nobody was suspecting or knew was in the movie, at least as far as I know.
Yeah.
But where he lies and he even admits, like, I don't know why
Yeah.
it was a stupid thing to do.
Yep.
And so it's like a self-sabotage
Yeah.
that occurs. I mean, I knew all along that Strauss, like the moment he talked about, I forget the other guy who he was trying to point the finger out as to blame for Oppenheimer's downfall. But the moment he had that conversation with his staffer, I was like, okay, it was obviously you.
Yeah.
But whatever, we'll go back to that. But yeah, Robert Downey Jr., I think will get a nomination. I hope he wins.
I hope so too.
I love Cillian Murphy. He does great. This is a big role for him. I'm sure he's going to get nominated. He has a good chance of winning.
Yeah.
However, I feel like I've seen Cillian Murphy play this role at least 5 times.
See? Yeah.
Because I watched Peaky Blinders. Okay.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay. But Robert Downey Jr. and just his celebrityness of it, like I can't not associate his face with him being who he is. At the same time, he managed to very much, I wouldn't say completely, like, get lost in the role, but he did really well. And because I felt like I was watching an evil Tony Stark.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just fun. I was like, you are an evil, and you're not even that evil. You're just Tony Stark playing the villain in this other person's story. But yeah. Oh, I know who else I wanted to talk about. And another person who I did not know, there's so many people I did not know was going to be in this. And not just people, but also historical figures. Like, I had no idea Einstein would show up like 3 times. But then we get Truman. And I watched the scene with Truman. I didn't know it was Gary Oldman until way after. And I was listening to people talk. Yeah. In that scene, because I've heard some like interesting dissections of that scene. He was not, he did not hand, I just want to clarify for people. He did not, in my opinion, he did not hand the cloth to Oppenheimer saying like, or as like in a kindly way of like, here you go. No, because this movie is about ego. And Truman in that scene, that one scene showed he had the biggest ego of them all because now he's president. And he dropped the bomb. He pushed the button. He gave the order. So the victory is his and also the killing of all those people. But he doesn't care about that because it's not his people.
Right.
So I just heard some mixed things and I'm like, that bothers me because I don't think that's right. That's the right interpretation of what's going on there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this movie is not necessarily like the movie. What I found also to be interesting, Will, is this is a historical movie. There's a lot of events that play out that are history. There are a lot of people who pop up. Even name drops. JFK called it. Yet it's not about necessarily any one event. I mean, Hitler dies off camera because this isn't a World War II movie.
No. This
isn't also a McCarthyism movie or a movie about that time, about McCarthyism. It's about a chain reaction, a chain of events that took us from losing a war to building the weapon to win the war, only to have the main enemy of why we were building the weapon, they suddenly lost. But we still have this weapon and we want to show off. So there you go.
Yeah.
And then the fallout, which is also, the fallout is just, now it's, the chain will continue because now there are more weapons, which will lead to more wars and more, and just survival. It's triggered this survival instinct in a lot of the world leaders.
I like the analogy you used there, chain reaction, because that was another visual thing that I thought Nolan did well with showing the reactions in the interplaying with the waves and the atoms and everything, because you're right. I mean, this was a story about chain reactions and how one thing bouncing into another led to, to multiple cascading impacts on so many levels. And especially when you think into the science, and I just have a very rudimentary thing as far as quantum mechanics and those kind of, physics and those kind of things. But that's, we consider all the things that were going on there and how it, one event the reaction of, like, as we've talked before, Oppenheimer's decision to hang out with people who are politically problematic, and then it led to him losing a security clearance down the road, and so many things, and Truman, and all, and that pushing the bomb, thinking blood on your hands, I think that's why I was saying earlier how this film just sticks with you, because it is, when you think about what transpired there in that with the Manhattan Project and the ramifications of it, and some of the things and the questions that even at that time, and they were showing that in the room when the generals were trying to figure out which city in Japan to bomb, and it came down to, well, we're not going to do Kyoto because my wife went on vacation there, and the selfishness of.
But you notice they did not really, that scene was incomplete because we never went back and how Hiroshima and Nagasaki were determined.
Right.
Because that doesn't matter. Like, it's very interesting, the decisions that they do show and the ones that are just done off camera. And I feel like there's intention behind those choices because we've seen so many movies with the glorification of war and the glorification of these events that lean the other way. Well, I know you mentioned before how you saw Dunkirk, which I compare these two movies as Dunkirk. It's called Dunkirk. It's about the event itself.
Right.
And it's about that one day, that 1 hour, there's 3 different storylines, I think, happening.
Yep.
But you also don't get attached to any character. I don't think any character is named.
No.
I feel like it's been a while since I've watched it, but it's about that event and that sequence, played out through 3 different perspectives versus this movie. We get all the names. Too many names. I still can't I go back and forth between character name and actor name.
I do too. Yeah, because it's like Benny Safdie, Taylor. I mean, he wanted the H-bomb. I mean, that's right. Yeah.
But this is about Oppenheimer, and like a series of events. So they're like second cousins. Movie wise. That I think is really interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things, and we can't, another storyline that I don't want to definitely want to bring up too is, you know, Oppenheimer's wife and Emily Blunt's performance there, especially during, I mean, all throughout. I mean, just one, you know, how they met. You know, she was already, you know, she was married in a loveless marriage, and how they basically worked together to like arrange their marriage as far as planning that out. But then just even after she realized that whenever he went to San Francisco, and she knew about Gene, and whenever Gene committed suicide or was murdered, that was a kind of ambiguous thing that they kind of left there, because I mean there are questions about whether or not there was foul play with Gene's death, and when we see that scene where, you know, Robert finds out about it, and how she's like, you know, you have a job to do here. I guess, you know, and then of course the interrogation later, as far as the wild card, like, you know, they thought that, like, because of all the things that they've exposed with this man, we're going to like we're going to flip his wife. And then she just like gets up there and defends. She completely like stands up and just like, no, you know, yeah, I know this man has his flaws, but damn it, I'm sticking by him.
Right. Well,
and
he was interrogating her about her life more.
And her life. Yeah. But try to like impeach her to like, and pulling up all her faults and stuff.
Yeah.
To like,
well,
you know,
it also wasn't a court.
Yeah.
We're not here for persecution. We're here for denial.
Yeah.
That's.
But I just, yeah. But all throughout that, I just felt that she was you know, because thinking back to some other Nolan films, sometimes, you know, he sometimes doesn't portray women very well, you know, as far as getting the most out of his actresses. But I felt that Emily Blunt and what he got out of her, and what, you know, instead of being the dutiful wife, just sort of sitting back there holding the purse and like all hearing all this shit, she had agency. She was a force to be reckoned with just as much as Robert Oppenheimer was. And I really got that from her performance and from the direction in this film.
I don't know. I think she had one good scene.
But it was one good scene, but also even like thinking back to like whenever they went with their young son and like.
No, I know, like, she had more than one scene.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't feel like, I think besides the interrogation scene,
mm-hmm.
everything else we saw glimpses and potential. Like I don't think there was enough that was explored with her in terms of writing.
Mm.
Like, it's nothing about Emily Blunt's performance. I mean, it's Emily Blunt. It's just like, I'm not going to say anything bad about Florence Pugh's performance, but then again, I don't think she's a standout because her character wasn't given that much weight. So I actually think, I would beg to differ, and I still think that Nolan has an issue with writing for female characters.
Okay.
Because I think the female characters, there were few and far between, and none of them carried a big, like, arc. Because at one point, she's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And that's hardly ever touched on.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like, it's just alluded to.
It's alluded to. Yeah. I mean, as far as how she was introduced and stuff, I mean, I guess between the two, between Gene and Miss Oppenheimer, I do feel that she got more to do.
Right.
And I felt, at least at the time, and I still feel like she, you know, and I know it was just one scene, but I think there were just elements spread earlier on in the film that, like, what makes that scene work is because I felt like, at least I got more out of her than just that she was an alcoholic. And when they were out in Los Alamos and having those conversations, as far as her background and her history, as far as her prior marriages and stuff. It just, and then also like whenever Oppenheimer's was like a collapse and a mess when he finds out about Jean and how she handled that situation. When she found him, huddled over there in the corner by the rock or wherever it was, all those, the totality of those things building up is where I felt that was a very strong character for me.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Boy, I mean, we could talk for 3 hours. Yeah. No, I think, there's, like I said, there's so many places where this film could go. Where we could go with this, but I think we hit a lot of the big ones, and I think you are correct in what you said earlier, Sarah, that, this film, because of the editing choices and other things, it definitely, even with his long runtime, is definitely very rewatchable, because every time you approach it, you will find something different and piece things together in the story that maybe the first time you watched it you missed, because it is so much, quite frankly, that is being presented there.
Yeah. It is 3 hours long, so rewatchability maybe an hour at a time.
Yeah. It definitely will be broken up.
I think that it. I think people should see this in the theater. Yeah, it's a beautifully shot movie. Mm-hmm. I did see it in IMAX. I'm not about the price of that though. I can't say it enough. It's very beautifully shot.
Yeah.
And the sound mixing is one of the better in his filmography. I still had trouble hearing or understanding what characters were saying at the very beginning of the movie, but then eventually that stopped. I think overall this is probably in the top 3, best Nolan movies. And the cast delivered whatever they were given. And, I'm very pleased, and I'm more pleased that my history buff of a father enjoyed this movie, because I don't know. It's sometimes when I see movies with him, like he makes or breaks me with what I understand. If he doesn't like it, I never hear the end of it. Granted, he hated The Flash. So,